All right, this being the appointed time and place and seeing a quorum present, I'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Public Works Commission for October 28th to order. And I'll recognize that all commission members, except for Mr. Moldenauer, are here. Our next item up is comments and suggestions from citizens present. I do not see any physically here. Do we have anyone online? Nope. All right. Then our next item is to review and approve the minutes from our September 23rd meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thompson, and a second.
Second.
Mr. Blanky. Comments or questions on the motion? Any corrections? Nope, we're all good. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we move on to our business items, the first of which, item A, review and take possible action, 2025 stormwater utility rate study update. This is a carryover from our last meeting, and I'll hand it over to staff.
Thank you. At the September 23rd, 2025 Public Works Commission meeting, 3 alternative scenarios were presented to commissioners regarding stormwater utility rate increases linked to a study performed by Rueckert and Mielke in 2025. We received requests from the commissioners to do a deeper dive into option 2 in particular to see if that could be spread out more evenly across the years versus more of, I'll say, a lumpier increase year to year. So as a reminder, the 3 alternatives, and I'll recap them here. Alternative 1 was the stay the course option, I'll call it. And that was the largest of the 3 increases. This approach included implementation of the 2024 flood control plan over the next 30 to 40 years. Alternative 2 was more of a balanced approach, and it involved deferment of equipment purchases and some capital projects over the next few years. The 2024 flood control plan would likely take more than 40 years to implement with this option. Alternative number 3 further reduced that capital work over the next 10 years, further deferring some additional projects. And with that, the 2024 flood control plan would be spread out further into the future. After reviewing with Rueckert and Mielke and our city team, we agree with R&M's recommendation to move forward with alternative number 2. I'll turn it over to Steve Worster with Rueckert and Mielke to go over what we had discussed following the September Public Works Commission meeting as far as kind of spreading out those increases over the next several years.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Good evening, Commission. Have just a handful of slides here, and the intention here, like Andrew said, is to just update you all based off of the questions that you all had last month on things we could potentially do to the rate structure to really flatten out, like Andrew said, that lumpiness. Bridget is not here, as you can see this evening, so you're stuck with me, unfortunately. All right. There we go. So the first slide here, I wanted to just maybe add some perspective. Actually, I think add some perspective on kind of where we are in the grand scheme of things. So we talked last month how we haven't had a rate increase since 2020. And so bottom left of this graph, you can see the data point where we are, just over $12 a month for a single family home. So we just plotted what would have happened had we added cost, had a rate increase each year, essentially at about inflationary levels. So for the sake of simplicity, we just assumed 4% per year. We know inflation between 2020 and 26 was much more drastic up and down than that. I think if you looked at various CPI indexes, it's probably a little bit more than 4% on average over that 6-year period. But it was interesting. You plot that line and you can kind of see in the graph where it ended up here. And I'm gonna, oh boy, now I did it, Maureen. There. All right, sorry about that. And so plotted over the years, and you can see we were just shy of what would have been about $16 a month at that 4% increase. And then the three base alternatives that Andrew touched on just a minute ago, we plotted those on the right there. And so you can see alternative one, which was that most significant increase. I think it was about 26% over the current rates. Alternative two, 16% increase. Alternative three, 12% increase. And just, I think this adds some perspective and shows you that had we sort of kept up with inflation, we likely would have been at a level higher than all three of the alternatives that were presented in the report. So just wanted to make that point as we kind of drive into the rest of the slides. Sake of conversation, just wanted to show you as a reminder where things were at from the study. And so this is a single family home rate increases and the industrial rate increases, top and bottom of this table for all three of the alternatives. And you can see that relatively steep increase in year one. And then depending on the alternative, some significant increases in those first couple years, and then really just inflationary type increases in other years. So just a little background there. The work that we did since last month is trying to flatten that out. And so that's what you see here on this slide. The driving factor behind these numbers and why we maybe didn't go any lower than this was we talked last month about how the city has historically operated with a fund balance roughly equal to about 100% of annual operation and maintenance expenses inside the utility. So trying to keep a cash balance in there to cover essentially 1 year of O&M. And that matches a recommendation from the American Water Works Association on the water utility side of things. And it's kind of been the unofficial mantra for the city's stormwater utility over the years. So that was where we started. That's how the original rate increases were set, staying in line with that 100% O&M cash balance. For the sake of this, we dropped that threshold down to 80%. So we said, okay, we're good to drop to really eat into the cash balance down to a point of having 80% of a full year's O&M costs. But we didn't really feel comfortable going any lower than that. And so that's what really drove the numbers that you see here. So by doing that for alternative one, I'm just going to talk about the top half of this table, the single family home piece. By doing that, we were able to decrease that 26% increase that you saw down to 20%. But because we're collecting fewer dollars in year one, that pushes some pretty significant increases into the next 3 years to do, as Andrew said, that sort of stay the course alternative where we're wanting to keep the gas pedal down. Alternative three, 16% increase in the original study that we did. We were able to get that down to a 9% increase over the next 4 years. Then 2 years at 5%, and then, as you see, really 2 to 3% in the years after that. And then the third alternative started at 12%. We were able to get it down to 2 years at 8%, 2 years at 6%, and then 3 to 4% as we run that out. Tons of numbers, a lot. I know there's a lot there, but I just want to pause here and ask if there's any questions on this so far.
So taking the fund balance down to 80%,
Yep.
do the subsequent increases then raise it back up to 100%?
They do eventually. And I've got a slide at the back end that touches specifically on that. And yeah, for most of these alternatives, it's down at that 80% threshold for 2 to 3 years. And then as we get further out and you can see we don't have to generate as much cash, which is why we're able to lessen the increases down to the 2 to 3 to 4% range, because we do get back to that 100% threshold.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this piece? Okay, keep moving. All right, so translating that into dollars, what does that really mean? And so we smash this into the 5-year period rather than the full 10-year period, because we really think as we get out any further than 4 or 5 years, it's probably best to have a refreshed, larger picture analysis of this anyways. We talked a little bit about that last month. So this gives you some sense of each of those kind of 3 alternatives. Top half of this table is what was in the original study that you had seen last month. And then the bottom half of this table is what those rate increases would be for the 3 alternatives at the lower initial increases. And then we have three graphs here to sort of, I think, show this in a better fashion than just numbers. So the blue line here on the screen is the rate increase over the next 5 years, as proposed in the original study. And then the orange line is what you see, what you saw on the last slide with this lowering initial increase. And so you can sort of see as it flattens out in those first 2 to 3 years, softens the increase, generates less cash for the utility. So we're diving into our fund balance at that point. And then after year 2 or 3 or 4, we're generating a little bit more cash than we were previously, which helps us build that balance back up to essentially where we want to have it. So this was alternative number 1 in that scenario. Really the same graph for alternative 2. You see the inflection point for alternative 2 is pushed out about an extra year compared to the alternative 1. So it takes a little longer to get back to even under alternative 2. And alternative 3, smaller numbers, so it compresses the delta a little bit, but really the same concept. Less dollars to start with, more down the road. And then the last slide here talks through that cash balance recommendation. So there's that AWWA recommendation. And then you can see, Alderperson Blanky, the question that you had there, kind of where we landed with the cash balance under all 3 of those alternatives, and kind of where that low point in the cycle is and how quickly it gets back up to that 100% threshold. I do want to say on this slide too, the threshold of having 100% of O&M costs in a cash balance is relatively conservative. It is a good guideline to have, but it is fairly conservative. So as we're talking through this today, I don't want the options that we present here to strike fear into you and to say, oh my gosh, we can't dip into the cash balance at all below that 100% threshold. That's not the case. There are many utilities throughout the state that do that. We didn't feel comfortable recommending anything that went lower than 80%, but we are comfortable making a recommendation that all 3 of these would work, particularly knowing that we'll get back to that kind of that balance point later on in the cycle. And then the last point on this slide is the city has historically used debt for very large projects in the utility. They've used it, I think, pretty conservatively. They've been good stewards of the money in the utility. Use of debt would be a way to help flatten out the cash demands as well. Obviously, it pushes the burden into the future. You're paying interest on that debt. But if there is a very significant capital project that has to happen, that could be part of the conversation of a little bit more aggressive use of debt. So short, sweet. Felt like I used plenty of time last month, so I didn't want to bore you tonight. But certainly open for questions if you have any, or Andrew, Maureen, if there's anything that I didn't touch on that you wanted to make sure I hit.
What working amount is in the fund to do capital projects,
Yeah, great.
short of borrowing?
Great question. Yeah, I've got those numbers here. So under the first alternative, we're averaging about $1.62 million a year for capital projects. So it's $16 million over the 10-year period. Alternative 2, it's 1.45 million per year on average. Alternative 3, it's 1.26 million on average. And we did build into the model using debt on very significant capital projects. But frankly, in these first 5 years, I think the Hart Street project was the only project that was planned to use debt.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it gives you some sense of, we've got about $300,000 or $400,000 of difference per year on capital projects comparing alternative 1 to alternative 3. We felt like alternative 2 strikes the balance of probably not as aggressive as I would like the city to be as an engineer, wanting to make progress on the things that you have in front of you, but also understanding that there are some fiscal constraints facing the city and gets you to a level that I think allows you to do what you need to do.
Commission members?
What is the risk of dropping down to that 81 to 94% range as indicated.
Yeah, I think the risk would be if there's something catastrophic that happens, a massive storm that requires something out of the ordinary, something out of the ordinary that would be a significant draw on resources in the utility. You've got less ability to draw on money in the bank. So I think it raises the risk for the unknown. That threshold, the recommendation of 100% it's been out there for a long time. The industry has kind of said that's a good balance of being conservative, but not too conservative. A lot of utilities have said, yeah, it's probably overly conservative, which is why they've gone a little bit below that.
But in terms of dollars, if we were at 100% for next year as
Mhm.
compared to 81%
Yep.
over this scenario.
Yep.
And that was gonna have us average 1.6. Then that pushes it up to slightly under 2.
Yeah, but you're looking at capital costs versus O&M costs. So there's a little bit of a difference there.
I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to work out like the material difference. We're in a disaster scenario,
Yeah.
we're talking about debt anyway.
Yeah, right,
We're gonna borrow that. Like,
Right.
it's- I guess that's where I was going.
right.
To me, I don't think there's a significant risk in going down to 81 because it's a matter of a couple $100,000.
Yes, correct.
And that's something we can shift from year to year if we need to.
Yes, yep, agreed.
Yeah, it's potentially something you could even do short-term borrowing rather than long-term
Mhm.
borrowing. And you can
Correct.
have a future year.
Correct.
Other comments or questions? I'll just say, I do appreciate you coming up with multiple scenarios, each of these presenting an alternative that tried to smooth it out. I agree with you that this alternative 2 gives you that balance, as you said.
Mhm.
It doesn't start it off I'll say too low,
Right.
but yet doesn't throw a 16% increase
Right.
out there. Year 1. And yes, I think we all recognize the woulda, coulda, shoulda of the last 6 years. Wouldn't be where we are. but
Understood.
We had the exact same conversation about our water utility
Right.
a couple months ago. That if and only if
Yeah.
it had been done,
Yeah.
then we wouldn't have been where we were.
Yeah.
That's not a reflection on the
Yeah.
people present in the room. That's just decisions that were made.
Agreed. Yeah, I would say maybe as you consider your action tonight, maybe some guidance on future years would be appreciated as well.
Well, and to that effect, that's exactly what we did with the water rates. We said, here's what we're approving,
Mhm.
and we want you to come back with a scenario that builds in an inflationary
Yeah.
until the next 10-year required 10-year cycle.
Right, and I think it would be wise, I mean, even though you've projected out year over 10 years, I think it still would be wise to revisit this in 5 years, regardless of which alternative we select tonight, so.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Agreed.
And we can work to have the resolution reflect that this will have to go to council, right?
Correct.
Yep.
From here, it'll go to finance committee, and from finance, it'll go to council, but we can work with the city attorney to hopefully build in those rates year to year.
Other comments or questions from commission members? If not, is there a motion?
Make a motion to proceed with the revised alternative 2 with the intent that we revisit in 5 years.
Okay.
And also
Mhm.
build in inflationary increases to avoid large increases in the future.
Okay. So is there a second on that motion?
Your support.
Lawrence? Okay, so three-part motion, the revised alternative 2, revisit in 5 years and build in the future inflationary increases.
Yes.
All right. Comments or questions on the motion? The roll call on this, we're good. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, our next item of business is an update on the Clark Street STP Urban Grant submittal.
All right, thank you. And I'll turn this one over to Maureen McBroom, our stormwater project manager and grant writer, who did a lot of the heavy lifting on this one.
Sort of. It was a group project, so sort of. So the city is applying for a WISDOT STP urban project, urban funding for the Clark Street corridor that runs between Humboldt Street and South 12th Street. This project is it's a good stretch. It's been evaluated by the engineering division for compatibility with the STP urban grant program. So one of the things we do is we try and take the list of projects, list of streets that needs to be worked on, evaluate which ones are the locals, the collectors, the arterials, all this good stuff to find out which one is going to fit. We try and evaluate the what ifs that could come up on these projects. Is there a railroad nearby? Is there a waterway nearby? Is there something that could cause a hiccup from an STP perspective, from a WISDOT project? So this one seemed like a nice, clean project. We have applied for it. We've took this to Finance Committee. Finance did approve the resolution that went to council. This is basically just letting you know and keeping you guys updated on the project that we're looking at. This would provide funding between the 2026 and 2031 grant program. So we're looking at a 2031 construction project for Clark Street with a 2029 design. I believe the back of your packet had the city total cost at $797. We've got a WISDOT cost of 1.7. So I wanted to let you guys know what's going on. See if there's any questions about this project. It is a project that we decided to go for after reviewing the numbers of how much would it cost us to do it internally at the city level versus how much would it cost if we get the 80% funding. Even with these big numbers here, it would still cost us more to do it, just plain old city project, if we don't get the 80%. So we're decided it was a good money-saving way to approach this project. So I guess I'm just wondering if there's any questions. Again, this is just to open it up, let you know what's going on, see if any questions about the project.
When do we think we might hear?
I believe that is early next year. So the application honestly was submitted this morning. DOT got it. And if I remember correctly, it is January, February type thing. Does that sound right? Yeah, so I would assume after the holidays.
Any comments or questions, please?
If we don't get it for that year, can we roll it to the next year? Or are there limits to how many times you can apply for the same project?
If we don't get the funding from WISDOT, we can apply for this again. I think at that point, we probably evaluate and see why we didn't get it though. You know, was it just competition and what other projects were applied for? Or is there something about this project that caused that hiccup, right? So we probably look and see, is there something about this one that can be ironed out? Or is there something that, you know, we should be looking at a different project? So, but yes, we could apply again if we don't get it.
All right, any other comments or questions? Okay. Next, we move on to item C. Another update. This is the Fannie P. Lewis Park Shoreline Stabilization Project.
All right, another project that's going on, wanted to update you on. So this is, as you said, the Fannie Lewis Park Shoreline Stabilization Project. It's about 750 feet of shoreline along the Rock River that is significantly eroding at the moment. We've received a number of complaints from the public over the past few years about that. The drawdown last year really showed the problems there. So we did get a number of complaints then as well. We worked through the numbers. We were able to get a targeted runoff management grant from DNR. So that is something that covers the project period of 2025, 2026. Basically, we're at a point where we have done an RFP for design. We got, I believe, 7 proposals, and Kapoor was the top scoring proposal for that one. We just had a kickoff meeting last week, and we're at a point where they're starting to collect field data. They'll be providing some concepts to us in the near future with the idea of having this ultimately bid out next year for construction, probably late summer, fall of next year. So we're working in conjunction with the Parks Department on this project. Again, just wanted to open it up and let you know what's going on and see if there's any questions or thoughts on this project.
Comments or questions? I'll just note, because I've been to that park many times, it's in, where we go. That shoreline gets a significant amount of, lack of a better term, pedestrian traffic. Different than the shoreline in other parts of the city.
Okay,
So I would just pass that on as an observation. Could expect people to climb out onto whatever we put there
okay.
in the way of traffic, whatever it is, they're gonna go out on it.
That's actually great. That is something that we were talking about. Both when we were on site after the kickoff meeting, as well as during the kickoff meeting, is about, you know, creating areas that maybe are designed for people to get down close to the water. So yeah, that's great feedback. Thank you.
Shallow area right there. It's easily accessible. Everyone just goes right out on it. Okay,
Great, thank you.
then we'll move on to item D, review and discuss agreement with the City of Waukesha Fire Department and the City of Watertown Fire Department for specialized emergency response services.
Hi, thank you. So, this particular item, we're going to take action, but it's a discuss only, as the city attorney requested that we discuss it before taking action. So there's an awareness, so that the technical services contract, which, Fire Chief Union provided for me, can have additional attorney review. So we have this in front of you. Here's a little background. I wrote this up. We do have pure chlorine gas at the 3 drinking water treatment plants. Obviously, that is a hazardous material, very dangerous. We also have 3 emergency management safety plans, 2 with Jefferson County, 1 with Dodge County, regarding a chlorine gas leak. In the event of said leak, what we are to do is call 911. And we were under the impression that the respective county hazmat team, along with our own fire department, would respond to the gas leak and take care of that. That is not the case. They would help with the evacuation zone and the contacting of people located within zones. All those things are included in our plans, so we know who to call and the zone of evacuation. That doesn't address the actual leaking gas in the building. So this particular service agreement would help us cover that type of a event. In the event that it would happen right now, when we call 911, Waukesha would eventually respond to deal with that, as they are the ones that are trained in our area. Tanya, if I'm going off base here, you can let me know from your perspective why this is an important agreement for both the fire department and the water department.
Yes, so just to reiterate, the Watertown Fire Department ourselves had been trained in confined space and technical rescue about 10, 12 years ago. We are working on keeping our technical rescue, our rope rescue skills up to date and up to par. However, none of our personnel are actually certified in trained to safely do confined space and hazmat. We do work with Dodge and Dodge County Hazmat. However, it's a volunteer team and they are only certified to one level. And Waukesha is hazmat team, and the specialty teams would be able to do the confined space and the hazmat in a whole conceptual thing. So we would still work with Dodge or Jefferson County Emergency Management and Dodge County Hazmat to some degree. But this would be that next level where we can actually mitigate the issue, is by working with Waukesha.
Okay.
This was also noted as one of our system deficiencies when we had our EPA inspection a couple of years ago. So I've been working on this for a couple of years. I would like to commend our new fire chief as we have gotten to this point. Where the, no offense to the past two chiefs, but I wasn't able to get much direction. And here we are now that we finally have a plan in place, and you can see the fiscal impact. 9,144 annually is not a huge deal. The budget could actually support that this year in our outside services. There's some contingency built in every year there for the unknowns. So that's where we're at with that.
So presented this evening for informational purposes, and then once the attorney has reviewed the contract and they're okay with it, they would come back to this commission for approval?
Correct. It would come back for approval once that is finalized with our attorney and Waukesha's attorney. And then this governing body would make a recommendation to approve, and then it would go to city council for adoption by resolution.
With that in mind, comments or questions from commission members at this time?
Question, could we not approve pending city attorney's
I like that idea.
blessing, for lack of a better term?
They specifically asked us to wait, so.
Tanya can't really move it along on her end until the Public Works Commission does give their blessing for this agreement. So without an action tonight, it will come back again. We could make an action to approve pending the attorney revisions. But it still has to come back then in that.
And if there were any
Form.
revisions, then it would come back to us, of course, but if the attorney reviews with no revisions, couldn't we simply? It would save, we're talking about chlorine gas. If you inhale that,
Yep.
it's not a very pleasant way to go. This would speed up the process by effectively a month. So, that's my question on that. If that desire is, if that's okay with staff and the commission, I would make that motion in a moment, but I have another question first.
Okay.
Is there another water purification method other than chlorine gas?
Yes, there is. It would be sodium hypochlorite, a liquid bleach in a high concentration, or it's usually around 12.5%. I did check with DNR. I said, hey, here's just a what if. We want to switch from chlorine gas to sodium hypochlorite. Could also do ozone, but that gets to be much more problematic. So the hypochlorite acid would be the preferred alternative, which is what DNR told me is, sure, you can change, but it needs a DNR plan review and an engineering report to determine the proper size of the tanks and the pumps. And if you have the available space currently for the size of the tanks that would be needed, we'd have to have a tank big enough to have a feed rate per day, per week, per month, whatever they determine the amount we need on site. So I'm familiar with that system. The prior two positions I held with other municipalities both had the sodium hypochlorite, which was much more safe to work around. And the size of the room, for instance, give you a Fond du Lac where I was, they have sodium hypo. They also have 3 drinking water treatment plants. The largest treatment plant had a double tank system it would fit where we have room. So I don't think a building modification would be necessary, although we would have to go through the engineering review and DNR plan approval, which is not something that isn't a bad idea. I think we could still go that route and see what it would take for us to switch over. This is one of the things our water staff works with daily. As you said, I did put on the back, the PPE. We are able to go in and adjust the system, monitor the system, deal with the tanks with our protective equipment in a team of 2. We don't need an SCBA to go in and do that stuff. That is needed if there's a leak. We have leak detection, we have ventilation, our rooms are adequate and safe for our staff to be in. But it is an extremely dangerous element of the drinking water, which the evacuation zones are 0.7 miles for one and 1.5 mile for the central drinking water treatment. It's a rather large evacuation zone.
I think it would be in our best interests to look into changing. However, that's probably a capital item. It's not going to be cheap to do. But do the current systems have an effective lifespan? Or
Yes. So lifespan in the sense of the equipment, pumps, vacuum pumps.
right, eventually
scales.
they'll need to be replaced at some point.
Correct. So if we go with the newest one is the central drinking water plant put online in 2017. We have already changed out 2 of the 3 booster pumps that are associated with the chlorine gas because they failed. We have put in additional safety monitoring equipment there, but the life of the system that's in there, I'd put it at 10 years. So we're 2 years to the end of it where we would continue to do what we're doing, upgrade the scales, put in new enclosures. That one has a lot more bells and whistles for safety than the other 2 on the west and the east side, northeast. Those are basically much older, function and work properly. We have special adapters for the tanks of gas in the pumps. Those are new things that we always replace when we need to, but the scales are old, the rooms are old, things like that. So it would probably be a good time to explore that and just to get an idea of what would it cost for us to do that full conversion, aside from an engineering review. That wouldn't necessarily cost a lot for us to reach out and give hey, we have this, idea. We just want to check into that. What would that take with the DNR's plan review? Even if they would go forward and we get a review and an okay, that doesn't mean we have to do it, but we would have a better idea. Well, what would it cost then after that? So again, the official advice from the city attorney is to take no action.
Based on that, I think we've gone how many years without, another month probably isn't going to matter. And the other item I was just inquiring about isn't necessarily on the agenda for this evening, so I don't think we can give direction on that tonight either. But I like where your mind is going.
The next time we have for us the capital improvement plan, then we should.
That sounds like a good idea.
Other comments or questions on this item, commission members? All right. To item E. You would take possible action, wastewater department to put biosolids land application.
This agreement has received attorney review before our new attorney started, so this is ready. We have contracted with a company called Dom since 2021, and they were responsible for our biosolids. Prior to that, it was a different company. So under Dom Enterprises, we had a great relationship. Things were going great. Unfortunately, Brian Dom passed away last year, and we were kind of left without a contractor. They were able to come one more time with some of their workers, and we had to provide additional assistance to it. Since then, they sold the company. And Synagro purchased the assets of Dom Enterprise, and they reached out to us and said, hey, we were one of their customers and clients. Are you still interested? I took some time after finding out last year that actually it was into this spring, that we were going to need another agreement of some sort. So I reached out to the companies that had previously provided the service, and they do not do that anymore. Most of them gotten rid of their equipment and just have gone a different direction. So Synagro is who we have. That was the only one I could get to come forward with a contractual agreement. It's a one-year agreement with pricing that's not terribly out of line with where we were before. It's a little bit higher. But they provide the same level of service and then some. This is what they do. They're not just a Wisconsin company. So this is before you for approval so that we can remove our sludge from our barn. Currently, we are 100% full. I have all the fields ready and lined up, agreements with the farmers and DNR approvals, everything is ready for Synagro to come in. We have approximately 3,000 cubic yards. We won't know until we're completely empty. This is in the budget under biosolids hauling. There's a budget number and an account for this. So it's just a new company and a new agreement.
Comments or questions from commission members? Let's see, this is deja vu all over again. Exactly what happened to me the last time I was on the Public Works Commission. We had the same situation
Really?
and struggled for a year to
Well,
find a replacement vendor.
I'm not surprised. It's not a high profit margin type of business. Municipal biosolids hauling in a cake form isn't very common. It's mostly a liquid, which we don't have. Oh, we do, but we don't remove it as a liquid.
Again, do you know how far our fields are? I see there's zone.
Yep, we're in zone 1. Most of my fields, I have about 1,000 acres in my approval program with DNR. I've dialed in and focused on 3 farmers, all within about 7 miles. So all the fields I plan on using are 7 miles away, approximately. And I already have fields lined up for next spring as well, which are just in a different direction, 7 miles away. We also have our own fields next to the wastewater treatment plant. 100 acres of that property we purchased is also approved for land application. I usually save that for the, now what? Those are ready too, but I want to hold on and save those in the event that I have an issue with some kind of process or something.
And if we move forward, there would still be hauling yet this calendar year before freeze.
Yes, in fact, we would be going in a week or 2. They're in Racine right now and they have us penciled in for next. There is quite a bit of effort that goes into coordinating their schedule and the timing of the crops coming off the fields and the weather. It gets to be nightmarish every year, spring and fall. So we're essentially ready to go. The weather looks great.
So yeah, this is the season. I know this is when it's out there. So, any other comments or questions from commission members? If not, is there a motion?
I would make the motion to accept the Synagro biosolids application agreement.
Is there a second?
A second.
Marks? Comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And our last item of business, review and take possible action, purchase new primary sludge pumps. Just stay right on that theme.
Okay, this was part of our immediate priority as our facilities plan. These pumps, as I have written up, are one of the major components in the sludge processing that provides the end result of the cake sludge, which we were just talking about. We've been trying to ride these out as long as we can. We have 4 pumps in the basement of the primary building. And upstairs, we have 2 screw compressors and 2 air dryers that provide the air needed for our air diaphragm pumps in the basement. We lost another, we had been down to 3 pumps for a while, and we were working on trying to get parts to rebuild the pumps. Meanwhile, I was getting pricing on new pumps. And we could operate with 3 pumps, okay. And then we lost another pump. So now we're down to 2 pumps, and then a screw compressor went out on us. The problem with the screw compressors, a new one of those is $10,000. The compressor itself is obsolete and the parts are discontinued. So I don't want to go the route of getting another compressor if we're going to be replacing pumps. And with 2 pumps down now and 1 compressor down, it's time to get some new pumps. And so these pumps are needed. There's quite an 8-week lead time and things like that. We can get by in the interim. In addition to that, the air component downstairs that puts the air into the pump, piston pump, and takes it out is called a MAC valve. Those are also obsolete and discontinued. So we were trying to buy some on eBay last week, and we were not able to find any more of the MAC valve parts, which go with the complete air system. So these new pumps will eliminate the air system itself. The rotary load pumps, they match the pumps we have in the building down the hill, which is part of our sludge process as well. So this would turn over all of our sludge pumps to the same manufacturer and brand, which is really nice for us. And actually, these 2 would be exactly the same as these 4 would be the exactly same of 2 other ones that we have, and then we have 2 larger ones. Spare parts and ease and understanding of rebuilding these pumps. So we were trained on this already with these pumps. So we already know how to fix these. We already have spare parts for these. So this would be a great addition. And it would totally clean up this air system, which has been problematic all the time. We're constantly dealing with this air drying system and these Kaiser compressors and dryers and the controls that go along with it have been a nightmare and a headache. So it's in front of you tonight, looking for approval to move forward with these sludge pumps. The opinion of probable cost was 188, and you can see the 4 new pumps are 105,206. So it's a little less than what was estimated to be the cost for these pumps. There's some install and electrical that goes along with it, but I'm looking for the pump purchase here, and the rest of it, well, we're going to figure it out. We have a contractor there doing the UV, same type of project that was in the facilities plan that we're doing this year. So this one, again, was in for this year and was also in as part of the plan for next year. It's time to do it this year. So I wasn't able to wait any longer to bring this forward.
So would you clarify that last comment? It was in the budget for this year or is it in the budget?
Was included with the facilities plan improvements that were slated for this year. It was one piece of that. So I'm picking the major parts of that. The UV was priority 1. So that came forward. Then we were already moving on that. This was it wasn't hiding in there. This was included with the list of things provided to us for the facilities plan immediate priorities, the sludge pumps and the controls. So it was, and if it didn't happen this year, it was also in next year if it wasn't happening this year. So I didn't plan on losing 2 pumps and 1 compressor.
All right. Comments or questions from commission members? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve the purchase of 4 new Borger rotary load pumps, accessory instrumentation, and controls from Mulcahy Shaw for $105,206.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Comments or questions on the motion? when the resolution is prepared for this, would you please note in that resolution the original estimated cost?
Yes, I will. You're welcome.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Being no other business before this body this evening, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Move, do I second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned at 6:21. Thank you.